Hi, my name is Adam Greenfader. I'm the head of the Caribbean Council at the Urban Land Institute, and I'm really happy today to have Rogerio Basso of IDB Invest with us. How's it going, Rogerio?
Hello, Adam. Thank you for having me. I'm the head of tourism for IDB Invest. We are a large multilateral development bank focused primarily in Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Invest is the private sector division of the Inter-American Development Bank Group. We are a multilateral development agency made up of 45 countries and 26 regional operation nations where we could do business in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have, we're doing about $5 billion in transactions per year and have an AUM of over $12 billion. So it's an important institution in the region. And we're known for being countercyclical.
Today, here we are in the middle of a COVID-19 crisis. What differences or similarities do you see with the past crisis that we had in 2008?
So there are a few important differences on this crisis relative to others. I think the first one is that in this situation, there was a sudden halt of economic activity on a global basis. When you look at other crises such as the recession in 2002 or the global financial crisis in 2008, you saw that there was a gradual degradation of fundamentals. There were signs. You could see that something was coming, but this situation was different. Also, when you look at other pandemics, whether that be Zika, SARS, H1N1, you observe that the spread of these viruses, they were very local and they expanded a bit regionally, but there was nothing that was global in nature. So the velocity of collapse in this particular situation was unprecedented. And when you look at the way that the stock market behaved, the way that demand halted very quickly and travel ceased, that was something that we had never experienced before. I think a second major difference is the magnitude. When you look at the charts that we put together, the Excels, the software was not really built to show an 85% RevPAR decline. And going forward, I think the way that we're going to be doing these PowerPoint presentations and these tables is going to become very difficult to show such a dramatic decrease in performance. And hotels, the business model, it's not intended to operate with zero revenues. Economies in general are not designed to be in an extended lockdown mode. If you look at what's happening in the United States, we're very close to reaching $40 million, 40 million jobless claims in unemployment, which is almost the entirety of the population of the Caribbean. So these are some dramatic events that nobody could have planned for. And what's important is that even though this is impacting tourism, it has a very strong impact across the entire value chain. So the sector is going through dramatic strain from a RevPAR perspective, from an international travel point of view, from a unemployment perspective, and that is not something that we could have anticipated. Now, if there is a silver lining that we can obtain from this, is that this pandemic allowed us to do a little bit of planning and some sort of a predictive exercise. This was a crisis that moved from east to west. So as we were seeing what was happening in Asia, what was happening in Europe, it gave us a small glimpse of what was to come. And it allowed us, at least certain countries, to take some preventive measures, whether that be closing of some borders, instituting lockdowns, having some preparation around the health systems. That was positive. And then as we're trying to emerge from this crisis, we're getting a window into the future of recovery. right? Because we're looking at what's happening in China, what's happening in Europe. We're seeing that demand is starting to come back. And that also serves as a tool, as a barometer for us to extrapolate what could be happening in the Caribbean and Latin America as the economies slowly reopen. So, there are differences. I think this silver lining is of limited solace. Ultimately, the main difference of this crisis is one of speed and magnitude that it affected the business.
Just a follow-up question on that. I believe that in 2008, we really had an industry-specific crisis. The financial institutions were, if not the cause, they were a significant problem in the last crisis and had problems. Would you say that that is maybe some difference between this crisis and the last one? That it's not an industry-specific crisis, but just general across the whole world and all industries?
Yeah, I think your observation is right on point. What is unique here is that there's really no one to blame, right? This is not financial in nature, it's not mortgage related, it's not that people were being irresponsible or undisciplined with finances. It was a health crisis. So what we have found is that because there is no one individual that can be blamed, there is a significant amount of unity, a desire to cooperate, to be able to get out of this together. So that is also allowing for a much more collaborative environment for us to look for solutions to be able to exit.
What do you see that the tourism industry is doing to mitigate the impacts of this pandemic?
So we have been very impressed at how the overall sector has behaved during this pandemic. First, there's been an extreme focus on the preservation of life and the preservation of jobs. You saw that owners, they were very quick to take care in protecting their guests, protecting employees, protecting providers, many times deciding to shut down their premises, whether or not it had been government mandated, and to focus on the health and well-being of the people over financial return. We've also seen that they're trying to maintain jobs, extend benefits as much as possible, and there's been an extremely humane element at how they've been approaching this crisis. And all of these hoteliers are in survival mode. And they've tried to postpone capex and non-critical expenses, working with staff to consider salary reductions whenever possible. And then on the revenue side, we've also seen a lot of hoteliers trying to provide their facilities as temporary housing for quarantined citizens, convert some of their facilities to supplement the healthcare system, or lately, hearing about initiatives to use their facilities as they use offices. Owners have been very proactive in engaging with their lenders to have civilized and cordial discussions, and banks in general, they have been quite accommodating, by providing forbearance of principal and interest, given flexibility to tap into certain types of reserves, given covenant relief, and even reduction of certain fees. So the fourth and maybe last point that for us has been really important is the way that the industry has been coming together. Like I said before, this was nobody's fault. So you see an increasing amount of CEOs coming out, trying to search for solutions, doing it in a collaborative fashion, accessing the government and asking for their support and taking a stance. The crisis is of such magnitude that this is one time when the way the companies behave with guests, with employees, with the community, will always be remembered. So right now it's really important to do the right thing, and we've seen examples that is being done.
What is IDB Invest's response to the crisis as it relates to the tourism sector?
Now, in this context, we've taken a number of initiatives to deploy our inventory of resources to assist the region, and they focus around three elements. It's protect, alleviate, and reignite. So with that in mind, we are redirecting our resources to look and prioritize transactions always under a COVID lens. We have increased our COVID response to about $7 billion in the region and provided specific assistance around supplied trade finance, which are basically working capital lines of credit. And we've developed a crisis management facility of $500 million to support existing clients come out of this crisis. Now, to be a bit more specific as it relates to tourism, first, we're working on these working capital lines of credit, basically to assist on a short-term basis the needs of these companies to surface. We're also working very closely with our sister organization, the Inter-American Development Bank, to engage with governments on crisis mitigation, specifically as it relates to the implementation of biosecurity protocols. And we're also involved on thought leadership. I think that these types of discussions that we're engaging with ULI, to provide an unbiased perspective on the region and the crisis response is part of our responsibility with the sector. Ultimately, we see ourselves as a solutions bank, that we roll up our sleeves during the difficult times to figure it out together.
When you talk about countercyclical, I think that really is a key component of what you as a bank are and what you do and your philosophy. Can you explain a little bit more of that in detail?
Absolutely. I think, the easy solution is to say the sector is affected, it is risky, it is dangerous, we're gonna step aside and not do anything. But I think this concept of being countercyclical is doing the homework, analyzing past crises, analyzing the initiatives that each of these clients are doing, the initiatives that are being done at the government level, at the country level, in order to come out and being able to come up with a conclusion around risk assessment that we're able to and comfortable to live with. Ultimately, IDB Invest is a for-profit organization, so we need to be mindful of our financial health, but it is through rigorous due diligence and analysis that we're able to make the right decisions on how to support the sector. So countercyclical for us is doing the homework, devoting the time and the effort that is needed in order to identify how best to assist clients during a crisis.
I appreciate that. That's really, I think, what IDB Invest does best. And it's really when everyone runs for the hills that you guys roll up your sleeves and get to work. And it's most appreciated by a lot of the stakeholders. Rogerio, what do you think are the three main actions that should be implemented to better face this crisis?
So I want to go back to one of the questions that you made at the beginning, which was, why is this crisis different? And what we are realizing is that this requires meaningful government intervention for us to be able to exit. This crisis is not something that the private sector alone can take on its own. We are already seeing a significant amount of countries providing stimulus to their economies. We saw the United States over $2 trillion. And as you go throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, there are many governments that are making that injection into their economies. But what we require here is some sector-specific support. When you take the Caribbean, where 15.5% of GDP is tourism related, and it has over 2.5 million jobs, you know that it requires special attention. The Caribbean in particular is a fragile region. Demand is driven primarily by leisure. Over 89% of visitation is leisure oriented, and 73% is international based. And that means that it's not well diversified. You also have a situation where over 60% of the lodging inventory are independents. And these folks, they cannot make it on their own. They don't have significant financial wherewithal to react to this crisis. So that's where you need governments to step up. So this idea that this needs to be a collaboration between public and private sector is key. A second major initiative is around biosecurity protocols, because ultimately this is a crisis of confidence. I can trust, or I need to trust that I'm gonna go on business, whether that be leisure or for work, and that I'm going to be safe. There needs to be a coordinated effort across the entire value chain that is going to be true. Think about it from the perspective that if you go on vacation, Adam, you're going to get on an Uber, you're going to go to the airport, then you're going to get a plane, get to the hotel, restaurant, and so on. You need to feel confident that throughout the entire value chain of tourism, you're going to be safe. And that is going to take some time. Now, we cannot be paranoid about it, right? You cannot sanitize the entire universe, but your risk tolerance is going to increase as you see that there's going to be a treatment to reduce mortality rate, and eventually there's going to be a vaccine that prevents a contagion. Now, until that happens, we are going to have to take some measures to protect ourselves, much like the use of mask. That is going to be something temporary. For a period of time, you're going to see a significant use, but that is not going to be the new normal. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you're not going to be seeing people continue to use those masks when they travel. But let me go back to the biosecurity comment for a second. Right after 9/11, when they started instituting the protocols, the new travel protocols at the airports, basically what you saw is that you couldn't take, you had to take off your shoes, you had to take off your computers from their bags. The amount of water that you could pass through was limited, and that was the standard across all countries, right? It wasn't that there was one country that said there are certain computers that are allowed, or certain shoes that are allowed, or a certain amount of liquid is allowed. It was a pretty standard guideline across the globe. And that's what is needed here, because we need to make sure to avoid a cleanliness competition among hoteliers. It's not a race towards who uses more cleaning products or who gets more stars for cleaning the cleanest. You're going to have to train guests, employees, vendors, and the entire value chain on how to embrace the use of biosecurity protocols. Now, the third area where I think we need to focus on is what I just mentioned, that the support of the value, support of your local value chain. Ultimately, you have to buy local. You need to support your community. If that vegetable provider disappears, I guarantee you that over time, the cost of produce, the cost of vegetables for that hotel, they're going to increase. And this is not a time where you need to be cutthroat, where you're going to use your muscle and leverage to squish the small and medium-sized enterprise. It's this concept that your success depends on their success. Because if airlines collapse, if the taxi union ceases to exist, if you don't have anyone else to buy fruits and vegetables from, you're going to be the cleanest hotel in town with no people. So as I said before, and it's worth repeating, this is one time where companies will be remembered by the way that they treat their people, their customers and their community. And it's the time to do the right thing as a community, as an industry.
I really appreciate your insights and thoughts. Any final messages?
As we ponder about this crisis, we see that it's of unprecedented proportions, right? But our industry was in a good position as of December 2019. And it is much better to face a crisis when you're healthy, when you have strong fundamentals, than the contrary. When you look at tourism, it is an extremely resilient sector. And even though this crisis is going to hit us hard, we have overcome adversity in the past. Every single situation that has been difficult, we were able to overcome it. I was speaking to our CEO, James Scriven, a while back, and he mentioned a quote that really touched me, and I want to share with you right now. He said that this is one of the moments in history when no institution or individual can stand on the sidelines. Basically, I think the concept here is that inaction is not an option, and it's our moment to act as a unified industry. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. We'll be able to come out of this one, and we need to keep working together on it.
Well, from all of us at ULI, Rogerio, we really appreciate you taking a moment and speaking with us. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, Adam.
Bye-bye.